My name is Simcha Yakubovich. I'm a 3-time Emmy-winning filmmaker, 4 times nominated, 3 times a winner. And my thing, so to speak, is to look at contemporary events through historical lenses, specifically a Jewish lens. And the recent mob attack by Arabs on the streets of Amsterdam against Jews after a football game, what Americans call soccer, brought to mind the fact that Jews basically invented modern football. But it was the English, that's true. The English invented football. It was an offshoot of rugby. It was a very physical game. They exported it to the world and they beat everyone at it. But then the Jews got involved. They fell in love with the game. They fell in love with the game because, among other stories they tell, the Rothschilds, the famous wealthy Jewish family, brought English gardeners to Austria to tend to their gardens. And those gardeners not only tended to the gardens, they played football. They brought footballs and they played football on their beautiful grass. I don't know if the Rothschilds liked that, but other people who saw them play loved it. Jews fell in love with football. But guess what? Non-Jews, Jew haters, didn't let them play, didn't let them manage, and didn't let them own. So what did the Jews do? You keep us out of your country club? We'll start our own country club. They started Jewish teams. Koch Vienna, for example. Oh, that's quaint. No, it wasn't just quaint. They started analyzing the game. They did what Jews do. They drank coffee, they went into cafes in the 1920s and 30s, and they talked like I like to talk, and they analyzed like I like to analyze, and they said, wait a minute, this physical rugby-style game, it can be modified. Possession is important, short passes are important, tactics are important, and they changed the game. And Koch Vienna became the Austrian champions. And Hugo Meisel, the coach, became the coach of the national team. And the first time the English lost at home, a top team, the first time they lost at home to a foreign team was West Ham, 1923, against the Koch Vienna. All the players were Jewish on the field when they kicked West Ham's butt. Now, you'd think, oh, did they get a standing ovation from the press, sports press? No. Every anti-Semitic trope imaginable was thrown at them. The British press said, this used to be a man's game. We British are masculine. That Jewish race is effeminate. And now they're turning our beautiful English game into an effeminate game by all that strategy stuff. An analysis, basically the Jews in those cafes in Prague and in Berlin and Vienna, they invented commentary. And they started getting involved in non-Jewish teams, which the minute they were involved, either by managing them or owning them or partially owning them or playing on their fields, were dubbed Jew teams. Bayern Munich, arguably one of the best teams in the world. The Nazis came to power, they called it a Jew team. They put a swastika on their emblem. They got rid of the manager. You know, they killed the Jewish players, right? Julius Hirsch, one of the best players in Germany, national team. They murdered him in a concentration camp. He had divorced his non-Jewish wife just before to save her and the children. In a way, it worked because it delayed sending the children to a concentration camp long enough for the Soviet army to liberate that camp. But the other players, most of the other players weren't as fortunate. I don't know if you can say that to someone who was murdered. But for example, Arpad Weiss, one of the best players in Hungary, they murdered him, they murdered his wife, they murdered his children. That's what they did to the players. And the legacy goes on. Amazingly, you have anti-Semitism without Jews. I mean, there's a problem in Europe with anti-Semitism aimed at teams that have no Jews involved. But they once did. So Ajax is constantly attacked with chants that they should be gassed. And fans, non-Jews, have adopted the Jewish symbols as their own to fight back against these Jew haters, against these haters, period. So they sing Hava Nagila, they take out the Israeli flag. It's not just in Holland, it's Slavia in Czech Republic is attacked by Sparta all the time with the worst possible anti-Semitic tropes. In England, Tottenham, the fans were so sick of hearing that they're Yids, a slur against the Jews, that they now call themselves the Yid Army. Amazingly, even after the Jews were murdered, the anti-Semitism continues. And no credit is given to the Jews. I mean, Jews basically invented Brazilian soccer. What? Yeah. I mean, Bela Gutmann, a Hungarian Jew, national team, played for Akoach Vienna. He's the most successful coach in history. He won national titles in 10 different countries. He also won back-to-back European championships, the precursor to today's Champions League, in 1961 and 1962 with Benfica from Portugal. Why haven't you heard of him? Well, they remember him in Portugal, but you haven't heard of him because A, he was a Jew. He went to Brazil and he saw the talent there and he taught them tactical Jewish football. Along with a couple of other Hungarian Jews, he basically taught them. He was a Holocaust survivor. He escaped from the SS. He went to Brazil and he taught them Brazilian soccer. At Benfica, he would have won another championship, but he did such a Jewish thing. He asked for a raise. You know how Jews, they're into money, right? And the non-Jewish owner said no. He won back-to-back championships and dared to ask for a raise. So when they said no, he cursed them. He said, in 100 years, Benfica will not win again. And the curse so far is working because Benfica has gone to the European finals 8 times and lost all 8 times. And some people say that they've seen pilgrims from Portugal going to Bela Gutmann's grave, begging forgiveness for the Jew hatred, that the anti-Semitism that caused them to leave and curse. So far, it seems, from the other world where Bela is, he hasn't forgiven them. But I want to conclude with a hero story, not of a Jew hater, but of a man, non-Jew, who stood with the Jews, a real hero, and an amazing athlete. His name is Matthias Sindelar. If you haven't heard his name, you should have. In Austria, he was voted the best athlete of the 20th century. He reinvented superstardom in football. He was Ronaldo and Messi rolled into one before Ronaldo and Messi. He became the first football player that people cared who he goes out with, what he wears, what watch he has on. And when the Nazis took over Austria, when the Germans took over Austria in 1938, they dissolved the Austrian national team and the German national team, and they created the Aryan team. And they wanted him, Sindelar, to play for the Nazis. And he said, no, I'm retired. He bought a cafe from a Jew so that the Jew would have enough money to flee and save his wife and children, which he did. And when the Nazis came to the cafe, he said, I don't play football anymore. I'm retired. I'm a cafe owner. In a sense, that's where his career started, in the Jewish analysis of football in the cafes, and he refused. And the Nazis said, don't mess with us. And he said, I'm not messing with you. I don't want to play for you. And they found him dead with his fiancée in bed a little while later. And he died as a result of a gas leak, an accident. In a sense, in my books, he's the first gassed victim of the Holocaust. A superstar, non-Jewish football player who should have streets named after him in every place in Israel and around the world. And he became an example of what it is not to go after the Jews like they did on the streets of Amsterdam, but to stand with them.